This is episode 2 of The Modern Disciple. Again, this is Ryan Schneider.
This is Chris Van Buren.
And today we're going over a kind of controversial topic. I think we're on the same page because we both have tattoos.
Right. Yeah, I would hope so.
Yes, you would hope so. But we are talking about tattoos, and are they right? Are they wrong? Is there not a right answer for that?
Right.
And what it looks like in our Christian faith. So just to kind of start things off, Chris, why don't you tell us about your tattoos?
All right. I'd be happy to. I actually had to write them down and make sure I hit them all. But yeah, so I actually have, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have seven tattoos right now. I'll just say them. I don't remember which order I got them in. Mm-hmm. But I have one on my forearm that says time holds value. I have one on my other forearm that says driven by a vision. I have the month, May 18th, in Roman numerals. It's the day that I told my wife that I love her.
Nice.
Nice. Of 2016. I just got May 18th on there because otherwise it would have been going all around.
Right.
And then I have my mom's name, Rachel, right here. Got that when I was 15, right? Don't tell anybody. I have a tattoo right here on my shoulder that says under one sky. And then I have one here that says legacy in Spanish. So it says legado. And then I have my mom's birthday, which is the small one right here.
Oh, wow.
Because I only had $60 and I really wanted this tattoo. So yeah, it has her birthday right there. So that's my 7.
Awesome, man. Yeah, well, I only have one. I actually got it less than a week ago.
Okay.
It's the Exoye, the Christian fish, the Roman acronym that the early Christians used to identify as Christians. It stands for Jesus Christ, God, Savior, Son, or Son, Savior. I can't remember which one.
Okay.
But, yeah, that's my first one. And a little bit of background about me is I used to lay on the other side of this argument that a lot of Christians have. I used to think tattoos were like sacrilegious.
Okay. All right.
Right. Like when I was back in high school.
Yeah.
I remember when my wife, Ashley, she got her first tattoo. It's a little cross on her wrist. And I remember like almost throwing up when she told me that she got it.
Oh, man.
So that's my background, but I'll get into what I believe now.
Okay. I mean, as far as me, I've never been someone that's been like against it. I've always looked at it from a personal, like what is my reasoning? Like I see other people with tattoos and I don't even think twice.
Right.
Just because I've been in different environments where I know certain tattoos mean certain things. And so, I know some tattoos that mean certain things may have a backstory. And we won't get into that. But for me personally, it was always, I wanted one really bad when I was 15.
Yeah.
And that's when I got my first job. And so because I could pay for it, I told my mom, I was like, hey, I'm getting a tattoo. You don't have to pay for it. I'm just going to go get it. And then when she saw that it was her name, she was like, oh, okay, I'm cool with that.
Okay. It's like a good icebreaker.
Yep.
Hey, you're mad, but it's your name. So what are you going to do about it?
Exactly.
Well, let's just hop into it. I'm going to read out pretty much the verse that I hear most Christians use in the anti-tattoo camp, and also kind of talk about the background of it and read some verses around it.
Okay.
Because what is interesting is that if you're anti-tattoo, you're anti a couple of other things based on this verse.
Okay.
So this is Leviticus chapter 19, verse 28.
Yes.
This is God talking to Moses. And that specific verse reads, do not make cuts in your body for the dead or mark yourself with tattoos. I am the eternal one. And I'm reading the Voice translation.
Okay.
But they pretty much all universally say the same thing. So you read that, you don't have any real background of what the Bible is or understand some nuances. What do you think about when you read that? Putting yourself in that mindset.
Yeah, so to answer your question, when I first read it, and I think I read a different version, but it says, do not make gashing in your skin, right? Something like that. And, putting marks. When I first read it, if I have no background, well, really, I didn't have any background knowledge because I've never read through Leviticus.
Got it.
So I read that and I was like, well, I hope there's more, because
Right.
I definitely, if that's all there is, then I might need to figure something out. Go talk to God one-on-one and just, hey, how do we fix this?
How do we fix this? Do I need to go get these things removed?
Exactly.
So I'm going to read the verses around it. To start off the chapter, again, it's God talking to Moses. He's telling them that they are to be holy. I want all of you to honor your mothers and fathers, keep my Sabbaths. He's basically laying out a list of what they need to do in order to stay holy. This is after they've gone out of Egypt.
Okay.
And it gets really interesting because let's read verse 26.
Okay.
Do not consume any meat while the blood is still in it. Do not practice divination or fortune telling. Do not cut the hair at your temples or trim your beard. So, and hopping down to verse 29, do not defile your daughter by forcing her into prostitution. If you do, you do not only corrupt her, but you also infect the land with prostitution. So there's a lot of weird rules.
Right.
And I hope we live by some of them.
Yeah.
But cutting the hair at the temples or trimming your beard, I usually have a saying, if you meet a Christian who's against tattoos, ask them if they've ever trimmed their beard before.
Right. And if they come to you and they're already clean shaven, you don't even have to ask the question.
Exactly.
Right.
But also eating the meat with the blood in it. Again, these are Old Testament rules. Mm-hmm. And in the Old Testament, Jews were supposed to follow these laws.
Right.
Along with stuff like, circumcision. Mm-hmm. That's the main one that most people think about when they think about Jewish law. There's a lot of weird ones, some not so weird ones, keeping the Sabbath. So the whole tattoo point really boils down to which Jewish laws are Christians supposed to uphold.
Right. Yeah. I guess for me, whenever I read it, and so when I read Leviticus 19:28 and I asked, is there more? Mm-hmm. I started to do some digging and I realized that, the purpose of God saying that was because, and I'm not an expert by any means.
Right. We've made that clear. We're not experts on the show.
Exactly. So, but what I gathered was he said that for a reason. It was because they were practicing something culturally that made it seem as though they weren't worshiping God for who he is. Right. And the version that I read of Leviticus 19:28, I think it ended with, for I am the Lord.
For I am the Lord.
And so basically he said, don't do these things, for I am the Lord.
Right. Mine says I am the eternal one. So same thing.
Exactly. So that's when I was like, So basically what you're saying is they were doing this. It wasn't the act of them doing this, but it was the why they were doing it. That was the issue. And God was saying, hey, stop doing this.
Right.
Because you're using it to mourn the dead, which was a cultural thing. And I think it was something else about putting marks to show that they were a slave or captive.
Right.
And he's saying, hey, stop doing that because I am your Lord. Right. And it honestly kind of compliments them because it's saying, you're not a slave. You're not a captive. You don't have to mourn the dead. So that's kind of the way I was looking at it.
Yep. What I did was same kind of research, and to go along with that, apparently there were other religions that practiced tattooing as a form of worship to their gods. So basically the same thing you were saying. If you don't know, the Jews had a big problem with worshiping other gods in the region.
Right.
And this was one way that either they were worshiping or God also wanted the Jews to set themselves apart. That's why he says, don't intermarry with different races.
Right.
Don't intermarry with non-Jewish people. That was Old Testament. Mm-hmm. Don't do these things that will that will set you apart from being a Jew.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of background, a lot of weird kind of Old Testament stuff. There's some weird stuff in the Old Testament.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm reading through. Like I said before, I'm reading through. Following this plan that allows me to read the Old Testament and New Testament at the same time. And the first thing that I realize is a lot of Jesus, a lot of the purpose of the things that Jesus says during his time,
right,
is to bring that context to what is said in the Old Testament. Because, for example, like the whole Leviticus 19:28 is the what,
right,
and then Jesus brings the why. Because people are just people who follow that and don't get the tattoos and don't do the gashing in their skin. If they're just doing it without understanding why, or if they're not doing it without understanding why they're not doing it, then they're not doing it by faith. They're just by works, right? Which is what the Bible talks about. But anyway.
Like in defiance of God, they were doing these things, which is why God told them to stop.
Right.
So now we're going to hop over to the New Testament. So we have the background. Jewish people are not supposed to get tattoos. That's concrete in the faith of Judaism. It's right there, clear as day. We're going to hop over to the New Testament. And I'm going to read Acts 15. And background about this. This is Paul and Barnabas. They are meeting with the Judean council, right? And they are running into a problem with Gentile believers. Gentiles are anyone who's not Jewish in the Bible. So Roman, everything else. The big thing here is that none of these other people are circumcised. In the Jewish faith, you pretty much have to be circumcised. So they're trying to figure out, do these people need to be circumcised? And in a broader sense, do they need to follow our Jewish laws in order to be Christian? So we're just going to read a little bit in here. In verse 5, the Pharisees state, "No, this is not acceptable. These people must be circumcised, and we must require them to keep the whole Mosaic law." The apostles then and the elders met privately to discuss how this issue should be resolved. There was a lot of debate, and finally Peter stood up. So what Peter says here is important. "My brothers, you all know that in the early days of our movement, God decided that I should be the one through whom the first outsiders would hear the good news and become believers. God knows the human heart, and he showed approval of their hearts by giving them the Holy Spirit, just as he did for us. In cleansing their hearts by faith, God has made no distinction between them and us. So it makes no sense to me that some of you are testing God by burdening his disciples with a load that neither our forefathers nor we have been able to carry. No, we all believe that we will be liberated through the grace of the Lord Jesus. They will also be rescued in the same way." And we can hop down to verse 19. "So here's my counsel. We should not burden these outsiders who are turning to God. We should instead write a letter instructing them to abstain from four things. First, things associated with idol worship. Second, sexual immorality. Third, food killed by strangling. And fourth, blood. My reason for these four exceptions is that in every city there are Jewish communities where for generations the laws of Moses have been proclaimed, and on every Sabbath Moses is read in synagogues everywhere." So he's basically saying they don't have to uphold to all of our Jewish law. Why are we burdening these people who are from a different culture, different context, these laws that not even we have been able to keep up with, he says, as the Jewish people? Because if you ever read the Old Testament, you know the Jewish, they fell every couple of years, it seems like.
Okay.
He's saying, why are we trying to burden us and them with these things when instead we should be focusing on Jesus's grace? And that's what purifies us, not the laws of the Old Testament. Jesus purifies us.
Man, Peter's like, hey, relax. Take a chill pill real quick. No, yes, I agree. That's the way I feel, because I think the biggest part of what was said was in the beginning when it said, and I don't know word for word, but it said God's already given them the Holy Spirit. God's already accepted them. I mean, he could have ended it right there,
right,
and said, do I need to say any more, or are you guys going to keep trying to play God yourself? You know, because it wasn't just like Peter said, hey, you know, let's just let it ride.
Right.
He said, this is coming straight from God.
Right.
You know,
God appointed me.
Exactly.
Yes.
So he appointed me, but this is still coming from him. So let's, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that in itself speaks to, you know, this whole tattoo conversation. But also, I wanted to touch on the fact that you said in there they should, was the word abstain from those 4 things, right?
From those 4 things.
So something that kind of spoke to me when you said that was, he wasn't saying, hey, these guys, any of these people who have already committed those acts, don't let them in.
Right.
He's saying, hey, when they get here, basically, you have a clean slate, right? But abstain from these things.
Right. And he doesn't even say that if you struggle, if you do these 4 things, you're not saved. He's saying abstain from them. Try to abstain from them. But the main part is we are already made pure because Jesus fulfilled the Old Testament law. That's what the Old Testament law is about, is keeping the Jewish people pure. And through Jesus, we are made pure.
Yeah. And another part about what you said, which speaks to my heart, is the fact, I think it was in the beginning, it said either Jesus or God, obviously, same, you know, it said he knows the human heart. And for me, that's a big part of my thought process around my tattoos. And so something that I haven't told a lot of people is that, for me personally, this doesn't have to be the way everybody thinks about their tattoos or why they get their tattoos. But for me, this is something that's been in my mind recently. This isn't something that I've had in my mind as I was getting my tattoos.
Right.
But I think the Lord's kind of led me, I think the Lord's kind of led me down a certain way when it comes to my tattoos. And I kind of wrote it down here. I said, if I were to die, right, and somebody were to find my body, right? Because at that point, I'm not concerned with my body anymore, you know?
Right.
But
give it to science.
Exactly, exactly. And those who live on, the next 1 or 2 people, paramedics or whatever, that find my body and they're examining or whatever the case may be, you know, the way I look at my tattoos and the reasons that I get my tattoos is maybe that person, whatever they're going through in their life, might find encouragement or inspiration in that season of their life. Right. Because my tattoos mean a lot to me, as far as, you know, maybe when they read my tattoos, time holds value. You can't really read it. So they'll try and make out the letters.
Right.
And in working through making out the letters, they'll say, oh, that says time holds value. And maybe that person will have been going through something in their life where they forget to value the time that they have with those that they love.
Right.
So, and in saying that, I know for me, the way I look at it is, you know, like we said, you know, God knows the human heart. So whenever I get tattoos, I had to ask myself, am I getting this tattoo in order to defile the temple that the Lord gave me?
Right.
Or do I have good intentions? And I think that's a big part about tattoos, because, you know, if you're somebody who is getting a tattoo, but you have some kind of negative intention behind it, well, yeah, I don't think the Lord's okay with that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So the question of whether tattoos are good or not, it also kind of goes back behind, you know, the intention of the tattoo, I think. But
right.
anyway.
Exactly. That's cool. And I think that at least for me, my tattoo meant a lot.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to be freaking branded
Yes.
as a Christian.
Yes.
That was my reasoning for getting it. I said, I want something where I take off my shirt every time I look in the mirror. I mean, I wear this cross pretty much everywhere. I almost never take it off. Mm-hmm. But when I look in the mirror, it's almost like, doosh, this is who you are. So
Yes.
I don't know. And
that's a big deal, man.
it is a big deal. But you also, obviously, you don't have to be branded to be a Christian. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm just saying that I think people have different reasons. If you're getting the tattoo for worshiping another idol, then obviously that's a problem. I don't think we disagree on that.
Exactly.
Like I wouldn't say go out and get the 666 or the devil on you or anything like that.
Wouldn't recommend it.
Would not recommend it. That might be a whole nother issue, but strictly in tattoos as a broad topic, I think that verse points out that so far in our Christian lives, it should be fine, you know? And the main thing is, I always ask myself with a lot of these topics, is it a salvation issue? Because we're going to have theological differences, like when you walk down the street with your family, with everyone. The only theological differences that you should be really worried in staking your ground on, I think, are salvation issues. I don't think that people who are anti-tattoo, I don't think that most of them, there may be some, I don't think most of them think if you have tattoos, you're going to hell.
Right.
I don't think that. I don't know what they think exactly, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and they could all have like different thoughts, but if I was on that side of the spectrum, if I was, obviously I'm not with 7 tattoos, but if I was, I would look at it as, that's just an act of disobedience, just repent, daily, because it's not going anywhere. That tattoo's not going. So, but I mean, at the same time, I mean, it just goes back to the attention that the time that you spend giving attention to someone else's disobedience, or what you think is someone else's disobedience, is time away from making sure you are. That's the whole verse of the log and the speck, right? So
look at the log in your own eye, not the speck in your neighbor's or brothers or something like that.
Yeah. And
time you spend arguing with people. And this is what I want to get into next. For reference, I watched this guy on YouTube named Mike Winger, and he's phenomenal. I love all of his thoughts on different theological issues.
Okay.
And what really stuck out to me is how he expanded this conversation, because this is where most people stop. Mm-hmm. We say, okay, let's look at the Old Testament. Jewish law, it's bad. Look at the New Testament, we're fine to get it. But I wanted to talk about what he talked about, which is how we should deal with people who think tattoos are bad. Mm-hmm. Because if you're on this side of the argument, especially probably with people like you have arm tattoos, I at least can, cover mine up, so I'm not going to have to really deal with this issue as much. Mm-hmm. But if you run into someone who is anti-tattoo, this verse kind of speaks to that. So this is Romans 14, and I'm just going to read it out.
Okay.
It's high time that you welcome all people weak in the faith without debating and disputing their opinions. Here's the issue. One person believes that nothing's off the menu. He'll eat any food put before him. But there's another believer, we'll call him the weaker, this is from the Bible, who eats only vegetables because the meat is tainted through contact with an idol. So if we stop right there, there's two people, and it almost mirrors exactly what tattoos are. It's a purity issue. In the Jewish faith, if meat comes into contact with an idol, if you eat it, you're impure. Mm-hmm. Same thing with tattoos. If you have a tattoo, you're impure. So there's two people. One saying, I don't care. I'm not weak in the faith, according to the scripture. I know that salvation is through Christ. There's another believer who's still like, hey, we're still not supposed to do that. So let's keep reading to see what happens. If you are an eater of all things, or if you are a Christian who has tattoos, I'm inserting my own thoughts in here, but whatever. Do not be condescending to your vegetarian brother or sister. In turn, those who abstain from certain foods or those who abstain from tattoos on religious principles should not judge your brothers and sisters who eat meat or get tattoos. If God has accepted them, you have no reason to reject them. So, just breaking down that argument, it's almost a clear example in the Bible of how we should be treating each other on these topics.
Right. Yeah. Man, the verse that kind of comes to mind, and I'm still working on my verbatim, but I know Jesus always said, love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
So if I'm sitting here and say I have my tattoo, so we'll say I'm somebody who is good with tattoos, and let's just pretend you don't have one,
right,
and you're somebody who's anti-tattoo. I shouldn't treat you or be condescending to you,
right,
because I think that you are misinformed, because that's not how I would want to be loved or treated.
Right.
And you shouldn't treat me as though I am, I guess, also less than you.
Right.
Or because I'm disobedient, or because I have been disobedient, right? Because love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
And the big part, and I'll go back to that, is if God has already accepted them. So basically, again, they're reiterating that, hey, stay in your lane.
Right.
You know? Now, I don't know. I mean, there's some situation. Okay, as far as what we're talking about today and tattoos, all I hear in that verse is, hey, if God has already accepted them, and that's kind of like rhetorical in a sense. It's not saying if God, yes or no. It's saying, hey, you already know God's already accepted them. Right. So why are we still having this?
Why are we focusing on this issue?
Exactly.
And it's funny that even back then, they are dealing with the exact same crap we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
Is these little petty arguments, these little petty theological differences that pale in comparison to what we should be focusing on, which is building each other up and spreading the faith, not in a sense tearing each other down and arguing about the faith.
Right. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, what you said earlier is big. Like, that's huge. The fact that, is it a salvation issue?
Is it a salvation? Yep.
Because that's what we should be spending our time on. Right. And whenever I look at salvation, as far as tattoos go, you know, am I going to heaven if I have tattoos? Well, the tattoos are on my body.
Right.
Is my body going to heaven?
Right.
You know? And then at the same time, you're like, well, hey, you can still be disobedient with your body. And then that's where the human heart comes into play. Because my tattoo may be on my body, but if I mean for it to be an intentional act of disobedience or defiling, well, now that's a part of my heart. Like, now that's coming from my heart.
That's your where heart towards God.
Exactly. Right. So it's not necessarily the physical tattoo that you can see, but the sin there, the intentional sin there, is associated with the tattoo. And now we can have a conversation about salvation, because now it's important.
Right. And again, this is, I think Mike Winger said this. If you feel convicted about getting a tattoo, then don't get a tattoo.
Right.
Because then if you are getting one, it's an act from your heart against God. So exactly what you just touched on. And that's the point I want to reiterate is, if you're on the side of tattoos, or not even on the side, but you think tattoos are okay, that's the point I feel like a lot of people miss, is do not talk condescendingly to the anti-tattoo person.
Right.
Because it also comes back to culture. And I think that's where the main root of this tattoo argument is culture. Mm-hmm. I don't like when people hide behind the religious aspect of it. If you think it is a religious thing, okay, we just read, that's okay. But if you think it's deep down, you are more focused on the culture of it, I'd rather you not hide behind religion.
Right.
That being said, we also are called as Christians to meet people in their culture. So the same way we always talk about meeting people in the sinful culture, that most people associate with. If you're a missionary going towards the Middle East, if you're going in the Middle East, if you're a missionary and a woman, you're probably going to cover your head to honor their culture. To meet people in our culture here, sometimes we might have to, in a sense, cover our head. And that is the part of the topic that doesn't get touched on a lot.
Yeah.
And is an important one.
Yes, absolutely. That's what Jesus did. People were the Pharisees always questioned, why are you sitting with these tax collectors and sinners? Right? Jesus met them where they were at.
Right.
But it didn't change who he was. Right? And so that act of covering your head doesn't mean you change who you are. Right? It just means that you, like you said, meet them where they're at. You covering your head doesn't mean changing your heart. And that's very influential when it comes to the world we live in today.
Right.
Because like you said, a lot of people don't want to meet people where they're at, don't want to understand. That understanding before making a prejudgment, when you have that understanding, that's that'll set you ahead of so many people.
Right.
Because now you know why. Now you know the why. Understanding the why, because the what, if somebody sees me outside and they see my tattoos, that's the what. And if you don't take the time to understand the why, well, then we don't even need to have a conversation, because now we're wasting each other's time.
Right, exactly. And that's a good point. I know a guy who he has 2 sleeves. And every time he goes and preaches at the rest home, he wears long sleeve shirts.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's what it's all about, because I know if you have tattoos, it's a point of pride. It's already a point of contention, or it's not a point of pride. It's a point of contention. You know that some people don't like it. So that makes you, in a sense, kind of on the defense already. And if you're too defensive, it can become a point of pride, and then we have a problem.
Yeah.
But man, that's we've covered a lot today.
We have. And the last thing I want to say, and it's very simple, is for me, when it comes to my tattoos, when I'm in certain environments where people see the tattoos, and there's always that thought in my mind of, am I being prejudged? But it doesn't go farther than that. I don't care at this point in my life.
Right.
However, the beauty of that is that not hopefully, but I do my best to follow Jesus and show the love of Jesus everywhere I go. And so I think it's just so great where when I'm in that environment and that thought had creeped into my mind, however, the people in that environment see the love of Jesus, and I realize that, then I'm not even thinking about the tattoos at that point.
Right.
Because like we said, it's when they see your heart, then you can see past the tattoos. Right. I guess, in a sense. But yeah, that's been huge, and that's been a big part of my life, is just allowing people to see the love of Jesus despite what they see on the outside.
And I bet you deal with that on multiple facets.
I do. Yeah. I don't know. People have said, I don't see it this way, but people have said, hey man, you kind of come off kind of intimidating. But then I start talking, right, and they're like, oh, whatever.
Someone told Ashley that about me the other day. They were like, right, it's kind of intimidating. And I was like, what? And I said, wait, let me step back. I'm a big, bald white dude. That's why I had to start wearing glasses. Without glasses, I look like a skinhead.
I guess, man. I wouldn't think twice.
No, man. But I think that about wraps it up. The long story short, Jewish law, tattoos, they were anti-tattoo, unpure. Jesus came, got rid of the law. Through him we are pure. But we have to be careful with how we not combat, but talk about this tattoo subject and other subjects, because we got to be careful to also not judge the other person who's against it.
Yes. That just, be wary of the log and the speck. Yeah.
Right, because if they're anti-tattoo and you're pointing that out, then you're pointing out the log in their eye. Exactly.
It's a two-way street. It's a two-way street in any conversation.
Right. So. Exactly. Well, man, that's a great point to end on. Well, we're going to be back next week, episode 3. We don't know the topic yet. I think we might have Dr. Brady Collier on.
All right.
I need to get with him and see if what his schedule looks like. But we are probably going to be talking about the importance of contextualization.
Perfect.
And on Sunday, he got into it for about 3 minutes before Damaris started preaching.
Okay.
And I was a little bit worried. I went up to him after a sermon. I said, Brady, what the heck? You almost gave my dang podcast away.
Right?
People got to listen to this to hear the good stuff.
I love it.
But yeah, we'll be back next week.
All right. See y'all next week.